try. I don't know why I did. I just tried clicking the thing already.
Do it again.
Hey guys, Pride Month's not over yet, and we're chaotic already. Here we go. What is happening to me right now?
Chaos, absolute
Oh,
chaos.
it's I blame the solstice. It is June 20th. It is the summer solstice, and I'm at that weird midsummer like ooh, like chaotic but lethargic kind of place. So
Bring the heat.
the heat's got to me. It's been so hot lately and I've been dying. Um but we're still in Pride Month. We are halfway through Pride Month, so that means that our final couple of episodes this month are are going the Brita filter. Look at that big picture. Is this going to be a complimentary episode of Bucha Baby?
Uh, maybe hang on. Let me. Yes, hang on. Let me set it up.
Ari is going to record themselves for their water channel. Woo! Let's drink some water. I'm
I don't think that's
obsessed.
water, Don.
It's water with and I know it's in a wine glass, but it's actually water with some of that Mio stuff in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
I'll take it.
I don't think that's water, Donnie.
Every Redditor to water talk ever.
Donnie, that's not water. Oh my goodness. So, well, we're at episode 162. Tonight's topic is going to be why LGBTQ plus history matters. Of course, before we get to any of that, we're going to be talking about how we've been, and we're going to be sharing some current event snapshots as well. So, Ari, how have you been, and what have you been up
Let's
to?
switch it up, Donnie. How have you been? You. I always go first, but like, let's. How
Oh,
about you go first, Donnie?
okay, I like switching things up a little bit sometimes. I've been doing well. The week early on in the week, there was a lot of work. It was kind of hectic, but I managed to get through it. And since then, it's mostly been doing gardening, yard work. I had some family over yesterday. Nothing like overly extravagant. I've been trying to do some journaling. Oh my god. We have finished our patio, so we have a usable patio now with a patio set, like a pergola thing. So the
With
other
the
night,
the pergola, like Western
yeah.
Western pergola. Oh,
Mm-hmm. And so like the other night, like Britt was gaming with some of his friends. So I went out onto the patio. I lit some citronella candles, and I just sat there with our little like hangy lights in because we put hanging string lights in it. And I just sat there and for like an hour, and I just journaled for an entire hour. And it was an out of body experience. It was quite nice.
that sounds really amazing.
So, how have you been and what have you been up to?
I've been amazing. I told you that I've been meditating. I've been doing like super meditation, and I'm starting to see like the results of this meditation, like how it's like affecting not only myself, but like the people around me. Like I'm starting to see like ripples of like my consciousness like rippling out into other people. And like
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know if it's like me affecting other people or if it's just like coincidence. So I'm just kind of like being really skeptical about it and just being like, oh, it's not technically me, but like it's, you know, things are happen to be getting better around me as
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing those things. But like I'm kind of like,
I mean, we've had many conversations about manifestation, right? Like that
yeah,
could be meditation manifests.
well, yeah, and it's just like when I'm calm and like when I'm in a certain vibration, I'm wondering how it's affecting the people around me, like even
Mm-hmm.
on a very subconscious level. And so I don't know. It's because I see like because there's this thing called this Maharishi effect, like that people who meditate, um, like a square root of a certain percentage of the population, when they meditate, they ripple out into people
Hmm.
around them, like into the population. And so I think that what it is when you're calm and when you're of a certain like mental level, like
Hmm.
it's sort of like smiling. When you smile at a cashier, that cashier gets, happy and they start to have a good day. And that cashier
Hmm.
smile at somebody else, and then they'll smile at somebody else, and they'll smile at somebody else, and like it affects people on that you know level that you start to affect each other because you're all resonating at a certain level that you don't get drawn into like drama, just kind of like how if you frown it kind of ripples through channels.
Not that we don't enjoy being drawn into drama sometimes.
But what I'm saying
No,
is
yeah.
that it's like when you're negative, that negativity, like when you're being drawn and sucked down, like
It
it
perpetuates.
it
Yeah.
perpetuates into. So I'm saying like the reason why the Maharishi effect works, in my opinion, is because it it's you're going through your social networks and like you're affecting the people around you, even like through like casual encounters, like the way that you drive your car or the way that you interact with the grocery store clerk, or even just like the way that you're just walking in public, like just small interactions have big effects, and like it's
Hmm.
like a butterfly effect in that way.
We could do a whole episode on that at some point because I mean, I've observed situations like that over the years. I think we could really have an elongated conversation about it too. I think that would be
Yeah,
interesting.
I think it'd
Oh,
be
Arby's here. Hello, Arby. It's good to see you. And Lucky Akris is here. It's good to
oh
see you. I'm glad that people are tuning in. Um, the chat last week got a little chaotic sometimes, so we're going to be keeping an eye on it this week and and hope for the best, I guess, right? So current events snapshot. So we got a lot of current events to talk about. And the first one is Louisiana's governor just signed a law. Well, it was a bill that was passed through the state's legislature that requires the Ten Commandments to be displayed in all of the classrooms throughout the state, including higher education.
yeah, I thought that that was a little crazy. I saw that on EP News tonight, and I was like, how how is that a separation of church and state? Like, that's gonna
It's
get knocked down.
wild.
That's gonna how is that like how are okay, first of all, how is like the church of Satan not gonna come in and be like, let's put up our
Well, yeah,
churches.
like if you can do this, then why can't we do this then, right?
Right.
No, like it's so wild to me because simultaneously we have legislators, and this is going to relate to our conversation about why LGBTQ plus history matters tonight, but simultaneously in states, some like including Louisiana, we have states that are trying to erase LGBTQ plus literature, storytelling and experiences, but they are wanting to kind of insert this type of theocraticness within the classroom, and it's just very concerning
Well,
to me because it
theocratic
really,
propaganda.
yeah, like it is very Margaret Atwood Handmaid's Tale-ish to me.
Well,
And
because
well,
you want people to only learn one specific version. Like it's sort of like teaching creationism, that it's like a very like opinionated view of how certain things are,
mhm,
instead of basing on an education that's like based on observable facts. Um,
right,
and so it, it's propaganda. It's propaganda. It's like, but they see it as like fact. These are facts, and these are ways of living your life. And so,
yeah,
but it's authoritarian because of making everybody believe, even though they don't hold your same beliefs. is authoritarian, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. And I firmly believe that there's going to be some court cases about this because I think it's going to really draw some concerns to the surface from a lot of people. So we'll keep an eye out on that, everybody, and we'll let you know what happens because I think this is the first state to do this. So I don't know if other states will you know, continue that or anything like that. We'll see. Other news. Well, today is the summer solstice. I put that in our notes. Today is the summer solstice. Happy solstice,
Happy
everybody.
solstice.
It is the longest day of the year, and after that, it's all downhill because it's good. It's days are gonna get shorter, right? But we've been in such a ridiculous heat wave lately. Like the other day, like I walked outside, and it was like 95 degrees and there was like this stagnant humidity, and it's been in the news lately. There's been so much news about like this unprecedented unexpected heat wave of June, because normally the heat waves happen in like July or August, never June. So it's like, what's going on? And of course we know what really is going on.
Well, climate change, yeah.
Right, yeah.
I was listening to the radio today, and I was at the beach, and I heard the emergency broadcast system, and I was like, "What the heck is going
Ooh.
on?" And apparently, in Greenville, just outside of Grand Rapids, there was a tornado.
Today?
Yes.
Oh my
And it was
god.
going 20 miles an hour, and it was destroying a bunch of cars and stuff, and I was like and it was destroying, like, houses, and it was moving from Southeast Michigan, and I was it like, 'cause it was moving near, uh, uh, what's the name of the city? Because it was moving near, like, Lake Odessa and, uh
Oh,
oh
I know
god.
where you're talking about. It's like that's like kind of isn't that kind of like north and east of Grand Rapids, kind of?
Yeah, it's like
Oh,
south of
south.
Grand
Okay.
Rapids. So it's like southeast
Oh,
Michigan.
I know where you're talking about now. Yeah, that's
No,
scary though.
because it was like, yeah, so it was weird because I was like 'cause here I am listening to the radio, and then all of a sudden it's like, it's like,
Ooh.
"Tornado warning, please take cover," and it's like a bright sunny day out where I am, and it's like 95 degrees, and I'm watching all these boats go along on Lake Michigan, and I'm just like, "Where's the tornado, guys?"
Ooh. Oh my goodness. Oh, Lagiakra says, "What's your favorite LGBTQ plus representation in media?" Ooh, that's a good question.
Mm.
Ooh. How about we think about that and we come back to it when we talk about why LGBTQ plus history matters, because we will be touching on representation in that. Other news. Our I forgot to put this one in the notes. Justin Timberlake got a DUI.
Justin Timberlake is not my favorite person ever since the Britney,
Yeah.
book.
And the Janet Jackson stuff. And like just ooh, yeah. Definitely has proven to be quite a problematic person.
Yeah.
Another snapshot of current events that I wanted to draw attention to is Project 2025, which has been kind of discussed quite a bit lately, especially in media, which for those of you who do
What's
not know what that
Project
is,
2025?
Project 2025 is essentially a very long, like 900-page document assembled by conservatives, which kind of outlines their vision for the next Republican presidency and like what their goals are, their expectations, and everything like that. And if you go through it and read it, it's extremely concerning. It's extremely concerning. So just to kind of note, because I can put a link in the description later as well, but um, they are recommending in this document, like on the government level, like their proposal is to kind of have the Department of Justice placed under presidential control. They want to get rid of the Department of Education entirely.
Mm.
Um,
Are you kidding?
I am not kidding. Not kidding. It supports slashing federal money for research and investment in renewable energy. and climate awareness. It let's see, and
How
there's
could
like
they?
a
What? Why would they do that though?
um I don't know because it
What's
advances
their
their
reasoning for
agenda.
doing those things? Just because they want to save on taxpayer money?
Probably. I mean, to them, at the end of the day, it's always just, a paycheck. It's always just money. But I really think, especially as we kind of navigate toward election season, I think it's important that everybody become aware of that type of thing because, like, obviously, if this is their vision for the next presidential term, like, that could impact a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Um, what other things do we have on the current event snapshot?
So the presidential debates are going to happen the earliest that they've ever happened before because Robert Kennedy Jr. failed to meet the requirements for the CNN debate. So it's going to be a showdown between Trump and Biden. I was concerned because I was talking to my sister about it that there was going to be some like problematic stuff, like something happened with the audience, but there's going to be no audience. There's no audience because I was like, I hope that there's gonna be, like, not, like, a coup or something because with the audience, like, some January 6th thing happening with audience
Mm-hmm.
members or some kind of, like that was, like, security's gonna be really tight or something, like,
That would be,
well, like,
yeah,
because
yeah.
'cause I'm, like, thinking of, like, protests or something happening outside even, and just, like, them storming or whatever during that and creating, like, a coup. I'm so concerned that something's gonna
I
happen
think
during
January 6th has really kind of stirred so much trauma and concern over that type of thing because we have never really seen that
well, I'm just
ever.
I'm just so concerned about Trump and Biden meeting together and just, like, Trump just being like getting any sort of like platform in which he has the ability to like speak uncensored at
Mm-hmm.
any sort of time in which his followers are able to be like, you know, that his followers are able to like gather or like that they're able to be any sort of that he can activate his people or whatever in any sort of manner. It's
Right.
just it's sort of like it's scary to me in any sort of way that like if he has the ability to speak what he's going to say or what he is going to um encourage them to do because we've seen
Mm-hmm.
in the past that he has encouraged not good things that especially if he's like, "If I don't win this election, you know, take this country by storm." And he even
Mm-hmm.
said that the last election was false and that he actually won the election. So who's to say that he's not gonna do the same thing again, that he's not going to say, "Well, if I don't win this election, it's not a fake election or that it's not a good election and that you don't have to listen
Right.
to any of this and that you should just take this country by storm
There's
or storm the White
so
House
much
or do whatever."
there's so much power in that denialism, right? That's really scary.
And so I'm just like the fact that we're going on with this farce and we're allowing him to even come onto the political stage terrifies me. That what is he going to
Yeah.
say when he is given a platform at all?
No, I think that's a valid fear and a valid concern. It's also at the forefront of my mind too. Lagiaker says David Draymond, the lead singer of Disturbed, signed an Israeli. Oh my goodness, I did not know about that. I'll have to look that up. Ooh. Well, Ari, are we ready for the show mission statement? I
Let's
believe
do
it's your
it.
turn tonight.
It's my turn. Oh, it's my turn. All right, here we go. We live in a dynamic society where social media shapes us by creating greater opportunities for connection. It has led to a developing understanding of the adversity many marginalized communities face, the powers causing the adversity, and those who act as bystanders as atrocities take place in real time. Our goal with this show is to make connections and have challenging conversations about social topics, current events, pop culture, and art. Together, let's weave the threads of understanding with what privilege we have in order to learn, educate, and create in a world that's growing.
Ah, beautiful recitation. Love
Yeah.
it. So, being that it is Pride Month, obviously, we wanted to kind of carve out a little space and have a conversation about why LGBTQ plus history matters. Now, I say this because recently, I mean, actually, this was quite a while ago, but I had a conversation with someone in the LGBTQ plus community who made a comment about just kind like they kind of just eye rolled over the conversation of LGBTQ plus history, and I was like, ooh, I don't like that. Like you eye rolled over, and they basically established that like they didn't really. They said, why do we need to live in the past when we should be looking forward? And you know, I have
Those
no
who don't know
doubt.
about history are doomed to repeat it.
Absolutely, that's kind of what I said to them too. And I was like, like I'm sure you mean well, but like we would literally not be where we are now had it not been for those people and for those movements and efforts and everything like that.
Don't do Marcia dirty.
Don't do Marcia dirty, don't do Sylvia Rivera dirty, Harvey Milk dirty, Matthew, none of them, right? And we'll be talking about those very crucial individuals here in just a few minutes. But so with that being in mind, like I think it'd be really interesting to start this conversation talking about when we were first exposed to LGBTQ plus history and what our reactions were. So when were you first exposed to the fact that we as a community do have a history and it's documented and it's significant? When like how did that go for you?
Well, I was, because how old are you, Donnie?
35.
So I'm a couple years older than you. I'm 39.
Mhm.
So I'm on the cusp of being I'm a millennial, like on the cusp of being a Gen Xer. Like I'm an elder millennial. So
Mhm.
like I was living history. Like I grew up part of, watching my Gen X, watching the Gen X stuff. And I grew up watching like people talking about the AIDS epidemic, and I grew up watching like the AIDS quilts, and like I grew up, you know, Matthew Shepard happened in 97 when I was in middle school. So
Mhm.
that happened, and I was like very cognizant of those things happening around me. Um, I was cognizant of the Don't Say Gay bill. That was something that happened when I was young, and so that was something that was being talked about, like, and that conversation was happening all around me, and I was very aware of all of those things that were happening. Um, I had family members on my stepdad's side that were gay, and so it was something that was just kind of like it was just sort of it wasn't always talked about, but it was just something that kind of just, like, streamed in every so often. That just, like,
Mhm.
we had gay family members, and then just, like, sort of, like, this kind of thing talked into conversation. And my mom is liberal, but, she tries, but she has, like my mom has such skewed views about, like, certain
Mhm.
marginalized groups, like she's very white feminist, very, second wave feminism that like
Mhm.
so it's from that, you know, perspective
School
of
of thought.
school of thought of like white women are always like the victim, but like so she means well, but like I grew up like, you know, with my mother's white woman tears of watching her being like what treating gay people a certain way and
Mhm.
treating
Yeah.
black people a certain way and treating and I saw those things and I I saw those things and I made judgment calls about those things of how I didn't want to be because they didn't follow a certain logic to me. Like
Mhm.
when you because
Yeah.
as a kid you see those things and you go, that's not those don't make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. So you're
Yeah.
listening to people around you, like, especially because the internet really changed a lot of, like, who we were because we were having conversations with people who are more diverse than us, like, because we're talking to gay people online, we're
Mm-hmm.
talking to Black people online, we're talking to all sorts of people online,
Yeah.
especially like you get on like Twitter or like, Tumblr, or like
Or
you're
even
having
before all of
conversations.
that, even before all of that, we had message boards and everything. We're
Well,
like
message boards are like MySpace, or like,
chat
AOL
rooms and
chat rooms and stuff, or Yahoo chats. You're talking to all different people from all different walks of life, because you have that and anonymity, right? So
hmm
like you're getting our millennial generation, we had even Gen X had that great equalizer of like we were all kind of, united against like the boomer generation,
yeah.
didn't which meant, well, like they worked towards equality, but they still had that like face to face, I'm still making judgment calls about those things, but the internet really was this great equalizer that kind of made it so that we were learning more about each other, and that we were making great strides towards being more thoughtful towards each other, just as a generation that we were working towards being more thoughtful towards each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to look at the comments really quick. Landon Zilla97 is here. Hello, it's good to see you. Rogue Agent. Don't forget that you're both amazing. You're amazing too. And then RP notes that when I was in elementary school, that's when Matthew Shepard, when that tragedy happened. So it's interesting. My experience differs from yours a bit. I would say when I was a kid, um, I like in the early 90s and mid 90s, like I was aware of like politics and things happening, but I was kept very insulated from like anything regarding the LGBTQ plus community. Because like at the time, like I had a cousin who had just come out and it was like this huge family controversy. So like my family was like very hyper vigilant about like no no exposure to anything of that nature. I didn't actually start finding out more about the LGBTQ plus community and our history until, like you were saying, I got access to the internet. Once I started getting access to the internet, I started doing more reading. I like was exposed to the Matthew Shepard tragedy that happened, and I began processing, like who I was as an individual at that time too. Are you about to say something?
He's asked me if I'm related to Wade Whipple, and I don't know if I'm related to Wade Whipple or not. I don't know the Whipples very well.
Am
That's
I
my dad's
horrible?
side.
I don't know who Wade Whipple is.
Um,
Is Wade Whipple an actor?
uh, who's Wade Whipple?
RP says I had no idea about anything LGBTQ plus, um, in any depth until college. Okay, kind of similar to my experience too. Let's see. Rogue Agent says I watched the animated Barbie movies because the church folks told me not to, so I bought a lot of those movies out of spite. I don't know what that says about me, but there you go. I mean, like I did, I remember doing that too. Like there were certain movies, like especially ones that were like queer coded, where we were like don't watch that, but I would anyway. Um, but like I didn't start developing a stronger understanding of LGBTQ plus history until college. I ended up joining my freshman year. I joined our Gay Straight Alliance, and I ended up meeting a lot of really important people. I think getting the opportunity to participate in our college, Ari and I went to the same school, and they would do like programming throughout the year. So like our school had a national coming out week, and I got to participate in that, and I got to meet my good friend, my late good friend and mentor Ace London, who um, very much was an activist and kind of like inspired me to look through the history because his spouse had died during the AIDS epidemic, and he literally wrote an entire book about like what that was like. So like I ended up reading his book, and it was like it was one of those like one person experience to communal experience pipeline situations where I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I just learned about this one person's experience. Now I need to go and learn about other people's experiences. So then I started learning about those very significant points in our history, like in the late 60s, the Stonewall riots, the fact that, BIPOC, transgender, people were at the forefront of the gay liberation movement at that time. People like Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera,
The first
right?
time I learned about Marsha P. Johnson, I knew that I had I was activated. I was
I was,
activated.
right.
It was like the first time I realized that the LGBTQ plus movement was built on the backs of BIPOC transgender women. I knew that this was for me. That
Yeah.
this was the thing that I wanted to be part of. Um, so um, I because I realized that um, this was this was something that this was their dream. This was their
Hmm.
dream, and, I wanted to help build upon it and be
No,
do my
yeah.
part to be part of it.
Absolutely. And the fact that these individuals were in very dangerous situations but standing their ground and, you know, self-actualizing, being visible, at the expense of their own safety, like that spoke loudly, right? Um across many different cities in the late 60s, like there were a lot of like LGBTQ plus spaces that were the only safe spaces for us. Like for
Mhm.
those of you who aren't aware of Stonewall, like that was essentially an establishment that was protected essentially by the mafia at that time.
Right.
Um,
Because
be
well, and they're just they were the ones who stood up for us. They were the ones who said, "We're not putting up with this anymore," because
yeah,
they were the ones getting harassed.
yeah, they were done with, like, there were police raids constantly, and they were like, no, we're done with this. We're standing up to it. We're standing up to this violence, and then thus the Stonewall riots happened, right? Um, Another event that I very much gravitated to, like as I went on that learning experience throughout college, was the assassination of Harvey Milk, who was one of the first openly gay politicians who, created and promoted a lot of like, pro LGBTQ plus legislation on a variety of different levels. And that story is extremely long, so I would recommend going and looking it up. But I ended up, I watched like some sort of documentary, like a historical documentary about it, and like it was tragic, but also like very eye opening. Ari, were you about to say something?
No, I was just
Oh,
watching.
you looked like you're about to say something.
No,
Um,
I was just being very thoughtful, and I was just enjoying what I was hearing.
I adore you. I adore you. But then I think what really struck me was the tragedy of Matthew Shepard's murder, or well, his death. But he was essentially the victim of anti-LGBTQ plus violence, and
Mhm.
that really took the media by storm back in 1997. And I remember, like, I was for like a whole month, I like hyperfixated on this my freshman year of college, and I just watched everything I could about the Matthew Shepard story. And I think that kind of like activated me a little bit, regarding like being vocal and being a little bit more confident in myself, because like nobody should ever have to experience that ever,
Yeah.
right? Um, but then of course, like there were like other uplifting events too that I gravitated to, like in 1999, President Bill Clinton recognizing June as Pride Month. That was a huge step forward. Marriage equality being, legalized in 2015, like that was significant. There's many other things as well, but like for me individually, like those are the things that I really gravitated to, historically speaking. And by the way, the gay rights movement did not necessarily start in the 60s. I know I've been focusing on like 60s forward. It
Yeah.
started far sooner than that.
Well, the
Um,
thing that I always think about that some of the great tragedies of, like, um, you know, the gay rights movement, that always make me sad, such as the burning of the transgender scientific studies that were done in Berlin, Germany. There was thousands of books, and um, they just the Nazis just burned all of that
Mm-hmm.
all of that study and that history on transgender history. Um, that there was all of this knowledge about transgender studies and um, all of the scientific research done, and it was just destroyed because they were just burning all of these books and all of this knowledge, and because it was about people who were different, and they wanted to destroy knowledge. They destroyed all of that research.
Yeah.
And so I think about that as like kind of one of the great tragedies in the same sense of like the way that people lament like the burning of the library at Alexandria. You
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
you think about those things and you're just like, what kind of things could we know now had that research not been destroyed?
What kind
Um,
of momentum would could we have had by now? Yeah.
yeah. And then you think about like the old like Hollywood, Los Angeles, speakeasies during, like, the 1920s. I always think about those things, because
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood was a little bit more progressive, so you think about these, like, underground bars and, like, clubs that you had, like, gay clubs during, like, the 20s and 30s, and, like, they had them in New York too. So you have, like,
Mm-hmm.
these gay clubs that people would go to, and so there's, like, these old pictures from, like, the 19 teens, and the 20s of like these gay couples, like these lesbians dressing up like men, or these men like getting together, and they're like they look like pals or buds, and then they're in these clubs and they're kissing or like they're hugging or whatever, but they're
Oh,
like private photographs of these people having,
yeah.
private moments together.
I'm
And
glad those things were documented because, like, I mean, going through those photos, it's very emotional because, like, having to fathom, like, the utter secrecy and the covertness that people would have to act on in order to simply stay safe,
mhm,
right? Like, I
right.
imagine it was so isolating, right? But no, like, I think that those aspects of history matter, right? So
Yeah.
that leads us to the question of why is it important for people in the community to learn about the history? So going back to that person who said what they said that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode here. So obviously this person was like, well, why not move forward? Well, Ari, your answer to that, like obviously we look at history so we learn from it and not allow it to repeat, right?
Mhm,
But I also think of it as very much like our history is, you know, representative of who we've become. Like we are who we are because of that history, and I think in ignoring it, we ignore a crucial aspect of our identities.
mhm,
And I think that also it is an immense sign of respect for those who came before us, for those who had to fight battles that we never had to fight. I think it's important to recognize and respect those people, because, like, obviously things aren't perfect now, but things are a lot better than those points in history, right?
Well, because for a lot of our history, a lot of gay history, we've had to hide and we've had to sneak beneath the surface. You get things like gay communities, like you have like San Francisco, which during like the 50s and 60s was like the most progressive that you have in like the United States. So you have like these gay communities that propped up that were progressive, but still you had a lot of like violence and things. You'd read like Jack Kerouac novels of like On the Road, or like and it would be like they would be beating up like gay people during those
Mm-hmm.
times, and like you still had this fear that if you were outed as a gay person in society, it didn't matter what time period before even the 60s,
Yeah.
there was this fear. And even after the 60s, up until like, 70s, 80s, 90s, there was this fear that if you were caught as a gay person, that if you were pointed out as a gay person, there was, especially even up to like Matthew Shepard in 97.
Mhm.
That's like 30 years ago. That's within our lifetime.
Wow,
That's
that's wild to think that it's been almost 30 years ago since that
that
happened.
there was this chance that you, if you were caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, you could be strung up on a fence and left to die. I mean,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
pretty powerful when you think about it in
Yeah.
our lifetime, that within our lifetime, as in the millennial lifetime, in the
Right.
within our siblings' lifetime, within the Generation X lifetime,
Well,
that
and like the late 80s and 90s, like that was a very uniquely vulnerable time as well because there was like that paralyzing fear surrounding the AIDS epidemic as well, right?
and
Like
that
that
they
was
were
just
hoping that it was gonna kill us off, that it was gonna
mhm,
kill off gay people. Well, specifically gay men, but that it was gonna kill gay people off.
right. Like there's a lot of like interesting historical like things to read out there, especially about how like the lesbian and trans communities were so supportive of gay men and sheltered them and took care
Mhm.
of them during the 80s and 90s when the AIDS epidemic was taking place. So that's why like if you're looking for shows that are educational but also entertaining that do like pertain to LGBTQ plus history, like Pose is a very good one. um, I've mentioned Fellow Travelers a few times. Like, I think that is a
Mhm.
very good one as well. There
Mhm.
are shows out there that will kind of, if you would prefer that type of media and learning, like, that will be very beneficial for you. Now, the other question of why is it important for people outside of the community to learn about LGBTQ plus history? Because, one, it acknowledges that we are a community and that we are people and we have a lived experience, right? But two, it also acts as representation for people. And
Well
when people see that, then they begin to shift the way that they treat the LGBTQ plus community.
well, they try to tell us that, LGBTQ plus people didn't exist at a certain point in history, that we only started to exist at a certain point, or that trans people only started to exist within the last, like, that we only started to exist within the last few, like, decades, or
Mm-hmm.
the last 10 years, or, like, that, that this is, like, a degradation of society, or that this is, like, the sign of the end times or something, some Christian rhetoric, that this is, like, a sign of degradation, and the fact of the matter is that you go back in history and you have, like, Greek and Roman gay people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it goes back in history, like,
Yeah, this is
gay people
not,
have existed
this
all the way
isn't
back
new.
in history. Gay people have existed all the way back in history, back to the Greek and Romans, and they try to say, like, "Oh, well, the Greek and Romans were destroyed by God," or whatever. They try to make up some reason why the Greek
Mm-hmm.
and Romans don't exist anymore, and it's because they were, that God punished them or something. There was some kind of punishment from God or something. Um, uh, and they always have some reason as to why certain cultures don't exist anymore, and that's because cultures get eaten up by other cultures, and those cultures also have gay people in them too. Go figure.
Mm-hmm. Exactly,
It's
right.
gay people have always existed from the beginning of time to the end of time, and that gay people, because gayness is part of our biological history, and that
Mm-hmm.
there is always a certain segment of the population that will be gay because it's part of our genetic tapestry.
And now that we've grown and evolved and we've learned how to understand identity, like we begin to see that all of these identities have existed since the beginning. We just
Yeah.
now have words to attribute to them, and we can learn more about them and expand our knowledge, right?
Mhm.
Thus leading to more inclusivity. Whereas I think a lot of like these anti-LGBTQ plus people just operate under like this, if I'm not seeing it, hearing it, or anything, it must not exist type of mentality. And it's like, no, we're here. We're here and
Right.
we're queer. So let's move on to some more lighthearted questions. So, who is your favorite LGBTQ plus icon that you aspire to be like, and why?
Oh my god.
Ooh.
So, uh, Elliot, um, they're Elliot,
Elliot Page.
Elliot Page. Yes, Elliot Page is my gay icon.
I love Elliot Page so much. I have so many
They're
gay
so cool.
icons.
They're just like the coolest. Like they came out as trans, and I was like,
Hmm.
I was very shocked. I was like, I had no idea that they were trans. Like, because it seemed so shocking to me, and I was like, but then I was like really supportive. I was like, you go, Elliot. You do this, and like you think about like the stuff they did before when they were a woman, and like it makes so much sense. Like all of the
Hmm.
stuff that they did before, like the way that they always kind of touted that line of androgyny into kind of masculinity. Like they always kind of were
Hmm.
like kind of tomboyish before into masculinity. Um, it always made sense. It always made sense that they were kind of masculine before, that they always had this masculinity to them. And
Hmm.
so became when they identified as trans masculine, it always it just always made sense that they were
Yeah.
trans.
And then we got to see Elliot living a more enriching, authentic life, a happier
Mhm.
life too, which I
Right.
think is really empowering. RP says mine is Adam Lambert plus Lady Gaga and Troye Sivan. Oh, many on my list as well that are very similar to
Perfect.
that.
Perfect.
I Ace London, like that mentor of mine, he is a person that I aspire to be more like as well. I would say that there's a new musician. Well, this person's been in the industry for a while, but they are blowing up right now. Chapel Roan. I don't know if you've heard of this person, but they're blowing up right now, and they are LGBTQ plus, and like seeing like their love, like their identity, but also the way they express it, their love of drag, makeup, and art and culture, while also being a part of like this huge pop music landscape is just something really cool to see
Was
and
Chappell
kind of
Roan the one
iconic.
who did the gay cowboy songs, or was that somebody else?
There's a couple of people that do gay cowboys. The
Okay,
chat, like if you look up Chapel Roan afterward, I think like you might recognize a couple of songs, but like Chapel Roan is in the process of blowing up. So like, I think the name is not a household name yet, but it's getting there. It's
okay.
getting there. Um, what are things that make you iconic as an LGBTQ plus person? What will your role in LGBTQ plus history be? What do you want it to be? Ooh, Ari came up with those questions, and these are some stunning questions.
I feel really dumb that I don't know who Chappell Roan is, and I wanna know who Chappell Roan is. I'm The thing about it
No,
is I don't
I,
watch enough TV to and I don't
right.
so it's
Which
my
is
fault.
fine though. That's totally fine though. I recently just got exposed to Chapel Roan, and apparently Chapel Roan's been around for a while, and I was like, who, what?
No, you're being so nice.
No, like, hey, I am never going to gauge someone on when, like, they were
I just learned
exposed to
who Sabrina
something.
Carpenter was.
That new song, Espresso, is a gay anthem. The
Yeah,
gays are eating that up, as
yeah.
they should. RP asks, do you know... No, I do not know. I do not think I know that person. So,
What
what
makes you
makes...
okay? What makes you an LGBTQ plus icon, Donnie?
Uh, that is a hard question.
You know what makes me a gay icon?
What?
An LGBTQ plus icon is the graceful way, like the graceful way that I present myself, that I can go from day to night core, in that I can dress like grungy and like a goblin during the day, but then I can go into nightcore, into dresses and fabulousness, and doll myself up and look beautiful at night. Go into I can dress masculine, and I can dress feminine, or I can go and I can do videos all day, or I can do poetry, or I can do this and I can do that and I can do something else.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. Well, and I think that's something that a lot of LGBTQ plus people can connect with too, like that ability to shift, right?
Yeah.
When we need to. I think for me, what makes me iconic is being able to, like, I really, over the past couple of years, like, especially with poetry, I've really seen how people have gravitated to the poems about LGBTQ plus experience. And I think that that's significant because I think it's really been educational for a lot of people who've been exposed to it, and especially been validating for like people in the community. So like, and of course that kind of translates back to my own experience, and it's validating of me. And I'm like, oh my god, my story matters, woo,
It
kind of a thing.
does. You're
It
amazing.
does. Oh, you're
And
amazing.
your poetry is not your poetry doesn't just speak volumes to the LGBTQ plus community. It speaks to a wide audience that everybody can find a little bit of something in your writing, that
Hmm.
that your experience has this universal effect, that everybody can find something in your work.
Thank you. That means a lot to me.
That's what
Like,
makes you an icon.
oh, that accessibility is important because I think with that accessibility, people outside of the LGBTQ plus community can see the many connections that we have. At least that's my
Mhm.
goal.
Right.
Shameless self promotion, everybody. My poetry reading, The Queer Confessional, is on my poetry channel,
It's
Donny
so good too.
Speaks.
I
If you've not
cried.
subscribed to it, oh, you cried? I didn't know you cried.
Yeah, you read that poem Snow Day about your relationship with your fiance,
With my
and
mans.
just the sweet simpleness of being together with somebody and being seen and being like being told that you're enough. It was so simple, and it evoked all of these feelings of um, wanting that of me wanting that with somebody, and but having that in the past, and it brought up memories of when somebody made me feel like I was enough, and
Mm,
just that feeling of just simple pleasure and just simple joy of being accepted and being
mm.
loved, and just having a quiet moment with somebody on the couch like that, where your legs are spread across them and they look at you and they go, "You're perfect."
Or you're gonna make me cry. You describing that's gonna make me cry. Hi, Gojimon 2024. Hope you're doing well. And thank you, Arby. Also, a lot of your poems have made me emotional. Thank
Mhm.
you. So, where do you think the next year will bring for us as far as future events? Especially in reflection of like the election, the way the community's been treating. Does the future look bright or bleak for the community? Honestly, it's really hard to tell, at least in my opinion, because I think so much hinges on 2024. I think that regardless what happens, though, we will continue to have our spaces, our support networks, our ability to express, and we'll still have allyship as well. I guess maybe I'm being like obnoxiously optimistic, but I'm hoping and I'm thinking that we will have more momentum and that there will be a good outcome. How are you feeling, Ari?
So I think it's going to be a mixed bag. I think that on the presidential level, things are going to look fairly optimistic, as far as like a congressional legislation for the LGBTQ plus community. That as far as it goes, that Congress and the Senate and the president will back the LGBTQ plus community. However, when you have things like the Supreme Court and on the state level, I feel as though you may have struggle and have issues, in certain states or certain areas of the country where you'll have these like small battles of like book banning, of like the don't say gay bills, or like
Mm-hmm.
certain restrictive things against the LGBTQ plus community within the next year and within the next like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So on a national level, you'll have this like support from the national government, but then on the state and local levels, you'll have these like small battles, these small fires being waged. And so what will happen is that you'll have these like small fires starting, and then they'll go to the national level, and you'll have like the Supreme Court fighting battles, where they'll decide certain things or they won't decide certain things, and they'll let things sort of flounder and just sort of
Mm-hmm.
let things happen. And then Congress will step in and be like, well, you really can't do that,
Yeah.
can you?
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of like it'll be this like back and forth between like legislation and the purists, where they try to state the legality of whether or not something is legal or not.
It's gonna be just kind of like a constant tug of war when you think about it. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you make some very interesting points about the state level, especially because, like, I mean, arguably in Michigan right now, we're kind of in a pro LGBTQ plus oasis. We're like, whereas, like, there are other states, like, I have friends, especially who live in Missouri, where it's very much like this dystopian hellscape. So I think what's going to become very important will be state level elections and local elections. School board elections as well are going to be incredibly important. So as you go forth, like, because I think people tend to just dismiss those are the spaces that I think have the potential to help LGBTQ plus people the most.
Mhm.
Because we've like already just identified, like a lot of these anti LGBTQ plus things are happening more on state levels and in community levels, right?
And that's really the big thing. That's why I talk about like Pride Month is like what can you do on your local level, during, especially during election year, like what can you do as far as advocacy to push forward all of the people who are going to help you, keep your community safe in your local area during these events. And like that's why it's always good to go to like your local pride parade or like your local
Mm-hmm.
festival and like figure out who you should be supporting during this time, and who's going to talk to your those local officials, who are going to be like, hey, I will support you, and I've got your back when I go vote on these issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And well, that fits perfectly with our final question. Like, what sorts of events can we do to keep the future on a certain trajectory, right? What sorts
Mhm.
of action plans can we take as a community? Well, staying informed about elections and like who people support, their initiatives, their focuses, their histories, like as a politician, right? Um, like you were just saying, are you supporting those local pride events? And I will also add on like supporting local LGBTQ plus grassroots organizations.
Mhm.
Um, whether it be like local pride, like whether it be PFLAG, whether it be GLAD, Trevor Project, etc. Like those grassroots
But, like, putting
efforts.
your money where your mouth is, because when you get
Mhm.
those candidates that are supporting the community, donating money to those candidates, because when they see that the LGBTQ plus community supports them financially, they're going to be more inclined to vote on issues that help the LGBTQ plus community.
Plus, and that's an excellent point. Plus, I would argue if you are supporting, people who are in elections or in positions of power, and some anti-LGBTQ plus thing happens and they don't take proper action, don't be afraid to talk to them, email them, give them a call. Like, I've actually noticed some pretty good response and success when you actively address people because at the end of the day, it's always the hateful bigots that are always the loudest. Whereas, like, those of us who are either in the community or allies, like, we tend to be non-confrontational. We don't want to like really draw attention to things, but sometimes when it comes to standing up for other people around you, you gotta risk a little bit of confrontation, right? Because
Right.
if you don't do that, what message does that send to the person that you might be an ally to, right?
Absolutely.
That goes for people in the LGBTQ plus community as well. Like the trans and non-binary communities, for example, face a lot more anti-LGBTQ plus bigotry than those other segments of the community. Like, what are we doing to stand up for those people? What are we doing to take an active role and ask those important questions, or so on and so forth? Does that make sense? Like, I think just taking that active role, bandwidth permitting, of course, is incredibly important.
We gotta do it. We
We
gotta do
got
it for our community.
we just we got to do it. So, and the thing is, I think also when people start realizing that the LGBTQ plus community is much bigger than people tend to believe,
Yeah.
that we are an economic force in of our own. Um, we do have wants and desires, and we have our own linguistics. We have our own community, and the fact that it's being acknowledged, and the fact that we do have our own history, I think that speaks so loudly as to like who we've become
Yeah.
as a group of people, right?
We're not alone.
We are not alone.
Mhm.
I think that is the perfect spot in which to wrap up our episode. What do you think?
I think it's good.
I love it. My friends, try your best to enjoy the rest of Pride Month. We still have a couple more weeks. Per the usual, if you have not subscribed to this channel yet, please do so. Click like for the algorithm. Check out Restitching the Tapestry on different streaming platforms, by the way, because our show is now on a bunch of different streaming platforms. Kudos to Ari for setting that up. But also don't forget to subscribe to Ari's channels, Strange Nothings, Tarot Time with Ari, and Boocha Baby.
I did a
Boocha
couple
Baby.
episodes tonight. I did a couple water episodes tonight.
I love that. And of course, even just tuning in here and supporting us and listening to us like that, I think if you are an ally, that's an active allyship as well. Because we are two LGBTQ plus people. We have spent the last 5 years sharing our thoughts about these various different things. Your support means a lot, and it keeps us doing this. So, anyway, we love you. Have a good rest of your night, everyone. Bye.
Bye.